missing someone. Love with all your heart. Missing someone. Love with heart.
Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. So this week I have a video that has some old footage that I totally forgot to edit, and I wanted to share with you guys because I feel like this is a really good gray blending transformation. So this client has actually been coming to me has come to me a few times after her initial appointment, and this is what her hair looked like initially when she first came into me. She found me online to help her with some gray blending, and one of the key things that she mentioned that she wanted for her look is she wanted something that was going to grow out really soft. As you can tell from her before, she didn't have a ton of gray to begin with, so we wanted to really just create something that would blend with her natural gray. And so I don't want to add in too many light pieces or anything like that. I don't want to add in anything that is going to be chunky at all because she has very few like white hairs overall, and they're kind of scattered like throughout her head. And so I'm going to be working on really just working with her natural dimension, and a little bit about her color history is she told me that she had tried out a few people and no one was able to kind of get her to the tone that she wanted. As you can see, the last color that she got, it faded out really warm, and she just doesn't love those warm tones against her skin tone. So my goal today is to try to just lighten her as light as possible. She told me from her understanding that she believed that and thought that she never got permanent color done, but based off of her before, I had a feeling that she might have gotten permanent color done. And some of the key things that I look for and that you can kind of tell even before coloring the hair is seeing the warmth in the hair. You can see that she has kind of like a warm cast of brown. And then there on that clip, I wanted to share with you guys that her highlights too are a little bit uneven, and so I really had to kind of just be careful and make sure to fix this with my saturation because I'm not going to be using different developers to lighten her hair. So really quick, if you are new here, I am going to be doing a signature technique and placement that I do on a lot of clients, but here I'm showcasing it in a way where I'm leaving a lot of dimension. So you'll see in a lot of other videos I've done where I'll do a full transformation, they do a full blonding type of thing. It's still gray blending, but for her, some of the things that we want to focus on is creating something that's going to grow out really natural, nothing to where she feels too blonde. Like she wants a gray blending look and blend to where she still feels like a brunette. And so we're gonna try to utilize her dark in between. And then after that, I'm going to be going in and adding just a few lowlights on some parts of her hair where I find that she has some old highlights that just didn't lighten enough. I feel like I just want to kind of cut a little bit of the warmth back a little bit, but later it can have the effect of it fading within 6 to 8 weeks. So sometimes when you do low light on hair like this, you will have to touch it up next time depending on how it's faded out or what they're feeling like, if they find that their hair could use it or not. It just depends on how the low light fades on each client. And so with this, I will do like start in the back of the nape, and I weaved it, and then I'll take a center part section towards the back of the head. And what I normally would do on like majority of my clients is I would normally slice this part, even though that she's like really dark. But since she wanted to really work with her natural and she doesn't have any white patches or anything like that, her gray is pretty sporadic throughout her whole head. It looks very like soft. She has a lot more pepper than salt. And so I'm doing the same placement, but to kind of mimic her gray pattern, I'm going to be going in and doing weaves for this. And since this is like her first session with me, I am doing more of like a small to medium sized weave. These weaves are not chunky, and I'm trying to focus my lightener because I'm not using a different developer for anything. So I'm doing a heavier saturation on the areas that I find are darker, a little bit warmer, and then lightly saturating on the areas that she might have a previous highlight, because she has expressed to me that she has done highlights before. She wasn't completely sure what they had put on her hair afterwards. So I just want to be a little bit extra cautious. And so after I finish the back, I'm going in and doing her detailed hairline. She doesn't want the front any lighter or that money piece look. So we're going to be doing like some baby small weaves around the hairline. I did about 2, leaving some negative space and just kind of connecting that front and back with that center section like I did in the back. And as I'm doing these 2, I want to mention that my sections, they're probably about like a 1/2 inch apart, and just trying to continue doing my more like small to medium sized weaves, as you guys can see right here in this clip. Another thing I want to note, when I do my weave, I try to kind of weave, I don't weave towards the ends of the hair. I try to weave a little bit closer to the root when I pick it through with my rat tail comb, because I find that it gives me a very consistent weave pattern. If I were to kind of do my weave pattern from the ends of the hair, it kind of gives more of like a inconsistent weave pattern. So I want it to be very consistent and very clean weave rather than like more of a random weave, because it makes it a lot easier to, that I've noticed, like when I do a touch up on this. So the whole reason why before I would do slices is because it's really easy for me to see where I did the slice and what needs to be picked up, or how to exactly retouch a slice. But now that I'm doing weaves, I want to make sure that my weaves are not too baby thin. Like I don't want something that's going to be like too thin of a baby light, and then I don't want something that's going to be kind of like a random weave to where I can't re-pick it up. So I want to do it big enough to where it's like visible, but I don't like want it to be too small to where like I can't see it. And so I'm going in pretty much doing the same thing. I did a weave above the ear, and now going on the sides and doing pretty much the same type of weave pattern that I did on the top of the head. Now that I've done all of the roots, I'm going in and doing some Teasy lights. This is basically kind of doing like a tip out. The tip out is just adding some extra highlights on the ends of her hair to kind of give that effect to where the roots are a little bit more dimensional and the ends get a little bit more solid toned. And so as I'm doing this too, I'm kind of actively picking up pieces that I feel like need some extra lightness, or I find that is a little bit darker or a little bit warmer. And so with my tip outs, I am trying to be a little bit more strategic in which areas that I pick up, where I over direct them, how much I tease them, and all of that. And whenever I do a tease, I want to make sure that the teases are nice and see-through. You can see the hair that I'm painting on that foil. It's a lot less hair than what's in the foils for the roots, and that's just going to help the tip outs, these foils, to kind of catch up to the top where the roots are. So now that I finished doing all of her highlights, I'm going in and in between each of the foils and adding in some lowlights. So I'm doing a level 6 ash, which is just good enough to kind of cut some of that warmth that you see in her hair. Yes, of course, this low light will be fading out, but at least in the meantime, it's going to help neutralize these warm highlights that she has. I find that some of the highlights that she had just didn't lift completely evenly, so this is just going to help even it out. And especially because she wants to kind of keep her dark dimension in between, it'll be a lot easier for me to kind of touch up these lowlights compared to if she wanted to kind of go lighter eventually. So yeah, I'm normally not a huge fan of having lowlights in the hair or adding them if they're unnecessary, but because this client really just knew she wanted to kind of just stay dimensional and not have any plans to go lighter in the future, then I agreed that lowlights would be great for her. But if a client was wanting to eventually go blonder and blonder, I normally would not really recommend it because you're going to have to highlight those parts out anyways. Also, I do want to mention that before this clip of us rinsing out her foils, there were some foils that we had to kind of resaturate and let it sit a little bit longer because as she was lifting, we did notice that she did end up having some permanent color done to her hair at some point, and it was being a lot more stubborn than certain parts of her hair. So in a sense that some parts of the hair in the foils did kind of have a band, and so when this happens, I have to go in and kind of resaturate in the foils if the hair can take it to kind of get a really clean lift. And then also I want to note that because I did the lowlights in between, I'm making sure that they don't kind of bleed into the highlights, so I like to rinse them separately. So I would say that her hair lifted overall closer to like a level 9. Some parts are a level 10, but most of the hair, because we had some stubborn areas, kind of lifted closer to like a level 9. And because of that, I am going to be using in a level 6 ash for her root shadow. This is pretty much what I used for her low light. And then for the toner all over, I'm going to be mixing in like a violet silver to kind of help cancel out a lot more yellow and make sure that this toner lasts her as long as possible. And from my experience with doing her hair and doing her touch-ups from this appointment, is that this toner does fade out the best on her and lasts her the longest. I feel like doing more of a violet gray, and when I say gray, more of like a medium gray, it just kind of helps tone out a lot of that warmth out, and so when she comes back in, it's not too brassy and it didn't fade out too fast for her. Now let's give the scenario that she had that band and she didn't lift as even as possible, or like let's say her hair couldn't handle going a little bit lighter or adding more lightener into the foils. I would then explain to the client what was happening, because obviously it's going to be a surprise to her because she didn't let me know, or she didn't know that she had permanent color in her hair. So when that happens, you kind of have to have a discussion with your client to discuss like alternative options so that you can mix up a toner to where it kind of sets up the expectation of what color she's going to have before you mix it up. And so if she didn't know that she had permanent color on her hair and we had to mix up a different color and she just couldn't get that light, then I would definitely just discuss different options of different toners and possibilities, and maybe tone her to be more of like an ashier brown or more of a medium brown in the meantime until she's able to kind of go lighter. Alrighty, so this is the final result of her hair. I feel like adding in those lights made a huge difference. You don't see much warmth at all in her hair, and I feel like the more violet-y gray tone just kind of ashed everything out completely. She still feels like a brunette, but of course when this does fade out, it will fade out a little blondish, but because we blended it so softly, like we did more small and medium-sized weaves, she's still going to feel very dark overall with just a few highlights, and those highlights will start to kind of mimic and blend really well with her natural gray and just kind of make her feel lighter but still blended to the point where she doesn't hate the grow out and it still will look good. Alrighty guys, that is it for this week's episode. Thank you guys so much for watching and tuning in, and as always, I will talk to you guys next week.